Begin the current down and set this Eruvin Daf Ayin. Begin on the top line of the Yomid. We will continue to explain the halacha of our previous mission regarding when someone forgot to join in the Eruv and he's nice in the shus, who gives the rights to his domain, what the halachic status is regarding the different configurations, if it's one person giving or taking, or two people giving or taking, how many people are remaining, and all those different cases. Hashish corresponds to the Kazakh and Cheskel, to any time Daf appreciate everyone who's joining us for today's daf. Some of these we're going to discuss in today's daf are regarding when someone is mevatel his rishus, when he gives up his rights in the courtyard. Does he have to be mevatel to every single person, or could he mevatel to one of them and automatically he's giving him his rights and it's going to be working for everybody? The question regarding Yomri Shema Shivat Rishus. Does inherited property on Shabbos, if someone inherits it, can he be mevatel the rishus, or do we say that no, you have to be able to have been joining the Eruvin from before Shabbos, and the guy didn't own it because he only yarshin it, he only inherited it on Shabbos, and therefore that's a question regarding if he can mevatel or not. The concept of Yerush Kar Davua is that an inheritor is considered an extension of his father, so even if, let's say, he technically could not have joined the Eruvin, but his father was able to, so he's considered as an extension of his father, and therefore maybe that's where there's one opinion that will hold that he would be able to mevatel. So begin the current daf. On the top line of the Yomid, the Gemara says, quoting from the Mishnah, first the Gemara goes through regarding another one of the cases that we mentioned in the Mishnah regarding its necessity of mentioning. We said that two people cannot take the right. So if let's say you have 5 people in the courtyard and 3 people are giving up their rights because they forgot to join the Eruv, 2 people cannot take. So the Gemara says, Lamali, why do you need that case? We already said in the Mishnah, if there's 2 people, they're going to make a forbidden one on the other. Obviously, 2 people cannot take the bittul of the other people because 2 people are taking, they didn't join in the Eruv. It's a joined area. Of course, you can't go ahead and carry that chutzner because everyone has their own private house to a communal courtyard as long as when there's more than one person. And the Eruv makes like one person. So of course, 2 people cannot take the rights of other people. So the Gemara notes it's necessary from this extra line in the Mishnah. It teaches us that Avagav the Amri Lei, although the original people said to those remaining 2, Kini Amanas Lahaknes, acquire with the intention of then reacquiring it to the other guy. Even that is not going to work, because what would you have said that here he's their agent? We said in the previous case, in the previous daf, the last case was, we said that what's the chiddush of these 2 people not going to work? We said that even if the guy one of the guys, the remaining 2 people goes in mevatel to the other one, we said it's not going to work. Now, we already said that already. So what's this extra case in the Mishnah? Is to tell you, even if they initially told them that, so we'd be mevatel to the 2 of you with the intention of that you are going to mevatel what we gave you to the other guy. So you say, okay, that shouldn't work because that there is shliach. He's an agent of them, and that should work. That's just saying that no, since ultimately when he acquired from them, it was ineffective because the bittul is not going to be working because there's 2 people. Even when they told him, even that case not going to work. That's a chiddush of this halacha ve'inay precious. Now this is where we start the current daf regarding continuing this theme regarding bittul. Blame the Abai and Rab. Abai and Rab the following question: There are 5 people dwelling in one courtyard. The classic case, and one of them forgot and he didn't join there. Kishmavat Rishus is this halacha when he has to go ahead and nullify his rights in the courtyard because he's making usher for everybody. Does he have to give up his rights to every single person? Or not? Is it enough to go ahead and mevatel to one person? So Rabbi said to him, you have to go ahead and do your bittul to every single member of the courtyard. So now we're going to quote a brisa which teaches 7 halachas that 4 of the cases seem to indicate that bittul rishus can be done, and 3 cases when bittul rishus cannot be done. In general, there are cases that you could do and when you can't do, and some of them may support Rabbah or Abai. So it's a very complicated. The brisa itself is not necessarily so complicated, but the explanation of it will be a little bit challenging, and the Gemara is going to go through it to find Komet and see does that support Abai and Rabbah, because meaning Rabbah is the one that's saying you have to mevatel every single person. Abai, who so to speak asked the question, he's so to speak saying like, oh, you don't have to. It's enough to go to mevatel to only one of them.
The union of bittul shoes is
giving up your rights.
Yeah, giving up my rights. So why do I have to give to each one? It's not mine anymore.
Right. So we'll see in the Gemara actually how does bittul actually work. Is it a kinyan? Is it a siluk? But that's what the machlek is. Do I have to do it to every single person? Say, I'm giving it up to you.
That would make sense. But if it's a siluk, then just not being.
But maybe I'm only being misalik mitzad you, not mitzad you, not mitzad you. So that's the machlek is regarding. You have to do it to every single one or not. So now the Gemara is going to go through the brisa. So first we're going to go through the brisa, and after we finish the brisa, we're going to explain it, and it's going to seem to indicate a raya to one of the two opinions. It says the Bryce like this. Case number 1. Echad shloi erev. One guy did not join in the erev, so the halacha is nice and restricted to echad she'erev. He can give his rights to someone in the courtyard that did make an erev. So as Rashi explains, if you have 3 people living in the courtyard, 2 of them made an erev, third guy did not join the erev. So what this first case of Bryce is saying, that the one who didn't join the erev could be mevatel to one of the 2 people that did make an erev, and it's going to be permitted because the other guy he has an erev with. The third guy who didn't make an erev is being mevatel his rights to this guy. So this is the raya. So we see that you don't have to mevatel to every single person. You only mevatel to one of them because the other 2 that made an erev are like one. So you see, this is actually where the raya is going to be from this first case. We're going to go through the whole brisa. The raya is actually from the first case that you see not like Rabbah. You see it on mevatel kol echad echad. It's la'echad she'erev. To one of the 2 people that joined the erev, you see it's going to be sufficient. But let's go on with the cases. Shnayim she'erev. Let's say it's the opposite. Let's say 2 people that made the erev, we're saying they could give their rights away to the one that didn't join the erev, because they could do that because they can't be all together. The first case was he's mevatel to them. Here we're saying they mevatel to him, and he's like the only guy here in the courtyard. He's like the case of it's like his own private courtyard. Case number 3. We're going to go and we're going to explain each one of these cases. Ushnayim shloi irvu. You could have 2 people that did not join the erev. They could give their rights to 2 people that live with them in the courtyard, she'irvu, that made an erev. So then you're giving your rights to the ones that made an erev, they can go ahead and carry over there. Or to a third person that lives with them in the same courtyard, sh'la'ir, they did not join the erev. Not him and not them, but since he's only one person, so you can mevatel your rights to him. That's case number 4. Or this is the lo'ilechad shaloi erev, or this is the case number 4, to the one that did not join the erev. Aval, but ein echad she'erev. You cannot have one person that made an erev with one person. Neisin rishus le'echad, can't give his rights to a third person that lives with them. Shaloi erev, that did not join in the erev, because when he's being mevatel, when he's being mevatel his rishus, there's still the other person that he made an erev with that's making it forbidden. So if one of the people that made an erev cannot give his rights to the other one that did not make the erev, because there's still the other third person that did join with him in the erev that's not giving up his rights. And the next case is ve'ein shnayim she'ervu. This is case number 6. You can't have 2 people that made an erev. They can't give their rights to 2 people that did not make an erev, like we said before, because 2 people cannot take the rights, because then each one's still making forbidden on the other one. In case number 7, there's ve'ein shnayim shloi erev. You can't have 2 people that did not join in the erev. To give their rights to 2 people that did not make it to join the erev. Again, that's a very simple case, because the 2 that they're giving to didn't make an erev anyway, so they're going to make it usher one on the other. So those are the 7 cases that we see here in the brisa. But one thing is that you see from this, says the Gemara Ketanim Yisrael, the opening case of this brisa was like this. Echad, in case you didn't get the cases, it's okay, we're going to comb through the cases. But echad shlei erev, if one person did not make an erev, we said leisner rishus le'echad shlei erev. You can give his rights. He didn't join the erev. He gave his right to one of the members that joined in the erev. So echad dam. This is what's the case talking about. Either like after Mabdei. So that's like one of those that even turning off doesn't work. Says the Gemara, if there's no one else with him, who did he exactly make an erev with that you're calling him la'echad she'ir? Obviously, there is another person with that person that you mevatel to. What was the word of the brisa? La'echad she'erev, to one guy that made the erev, and that you're not mevatel to every single person. But how's that going to help? You weren't mevatel to the other guy. Obviously, you see, not like Rabbah, you see that it's enough to do it to one of the members and not to every single member. So Gemara says no. Yes, that would support Abaya, that you only have to do it to one. But Rabbah would tell you, Rabbah would say, what are we talking about over here? You're right. If you're saying le'echad she'ir, obviously there was a second person that joined in the erev, but he passed away. Now, if he passed away, so there's only one guy remaining. La'echad she'ir, the one guy that had been part of the erev, he's the only guy remaining. Oh, of course, you can mevatel only to him because he's the only guy remaining. Now Rashi points out you have to say according to Rabbah that we're talking about what type of a development are we talking about? We're talking about actually a caravan that are dwelling in the open field somewhere, and they surrounded themselves with some type of a chutzner, and every guy just made his own tent. Then when the guy passed away, because we're saying a guy passed away, he doesn't have any inheritors for just an encampment in a caravan. Because if we're talking about literally a chutzner, then there are Yerushin. And since if the father would be around, he'd make it Aser, because he's still a remaining member, so then they would also make it Aser. So Rashi says it must be talking about that it's in some type of a shayara, some type of like an encampment they have somewhere, so there's no element of a Yerush.
Even though they're not there? Even if they're not there?
Yeah, because there would be the Yerushim. They have rights in it, and that we'll actually see later on. There is halacha, we'll see later on this Masechta, that if someone has a chutzner, a bias in some chutzner, even though he's not there, he still owns it, and if he didn't join in the Eruv, we spoke about it, if a guy's in the city and he leaves and this and that. But since since he's the owner and he did not join the Eruv, so that would make it Asa. So the Gemara says, wait a second. Okay, that explains why it's not difficult on Rabbah. But Ida Havam is, but if he's there, it was there, and then he died, it's Amos Sefer. Look at the Sefer. Sefer says, Aval ein echad she'eruv. But you cannot have one guy who joined in the Eruv, to give his rights to one guy who did not join the Eruv. Now the problem is, let's say we're talking about 3 people. Right? This seems to be the inverse of the Reisha. The Reisha was saying, the one guy who didn't join the Eruv could be mevatel his rights to one guy who did join the Eruv. Now you're saying, but the one guy who did join the Eruv cannot mevatel his rights to the one guy who did not join the Eruv. Wait a second. The Ida Havan this, but if you're telling me that the Echad She'eruv, his other partner that he made the Eruv with, used to be there, but now he's dead. Samai loy. Why can't the Echad She'eruv be mevatel his rights to the Echad She'lo Eruv? There's no one else left. Why can't you mevatel to one guy? And the Pshita says, obviously, the Isay that no, because the Echad She'ir has his partner She'ir, and that's why it's not going to work. Because if he has someone else, it's not going to help to be mevatel the Echad She'ir, because there's still the other guy who was part of the Eruv, but there wasn't mevatel to that Echad She'ir. Says the Gemara, and the Sefer Disa, the fact that the Sefer is where the other guy is around, so Reisha Namadisa, so the Reisha then, which is the same case just flipped backwards, is also that the other guy is there. So again, you're back to the question, it's not like Rabbah, because he's been about only le'echad she'ir, not to the other guy, but that's not about l'kol echad echad, you say not l'kol echad echad. So they don't know, is that a proof? Hakadisa, no, it's not true. The Reisha is talking about that the echad she'ir, there's no other guy, he died already. And the Sefer is that he is around. And since he's around, the Echad She'ir can have about the Echad She'ir. And the Gemara says, Teda, you should know that the Reisha has to be talking about where the other guy who was part of the Eruv was around, but he died, not like the Sefer. Because if the other guy is around, then like Rabbah says, you would have to mevatel to the both guys, and it wouldn't be enough to one guy. And says, how could I prove this? Because the Tani Sefer the Reisha. We learned what's called the Sefer of the Reisha, because Rashi explains the beginning of the Brisa until the words Aval are all one case. They're all that they are effective, the Bittul. And the talks for kids are not effective. So never the end of that first half, we're calling it the Sefer of the Reisha. What was the case? It says V'shnayim shlei irvu. If 2 people did not join in the Eruv, we said Neisnu Shusam l'shnayim she'ir, but they could give their rights to 2 people that joined in the Eruv. Says Rabbo l'shnayim in. Oh, what do you mean? Why l'shnayim she'irvu? Because if there's 2 people that join the Eruv, you have to give to each one of them. But la'echad loy, it wouldn't be sufficient to give to one of the 2, because you have mevatel kol echad ve'echad. So obviously, says Rabbi, you see like me, and therefore it's not a deichik teres like I'm saying. You see that it has to be, and so how do you explain the ratio? It must have been the havamis that it's enough la'echad she'ir because the other guy died already. Babayam, he would say no, it's not difficult. My lebeis, what does it mean in that case that you could be mevatel to l'shnayim she'ir? It means to those 2, but you don't have to do to each one of them. La'echad mibeis, it means to one of those 2. It just means to that group of 2. But you really could even do it just to one of the 2, because Abaye holds, no, it could be even enough to be mevatel to one of them. The Gemara finds this difficult. Because the Yachid, if that's the case, listening, then the words of the Brisa should have been la'echad she'ir, to one of the guys that made an Eruv, like the case of the Reisha. And if I'm going to tell you la'echad she'ir, I would know obviously that there's 2 people, because you can't have an Eruv less than 2 people. Or like the Sefer of that case, which the Brisa actually says, when you have 2 people that made an Eruv to one guy that doesn't make an Eruv, say le'echad she'ir. If it really means when it says l'shnayim, it means to one of the 2. So either say le'echad she'ir or le'echad she'ir. But why are you saying l'shnayim? Says the Gemara Kasha, it's a difficulty. It's not a refutation, but it is a difficulty on Abaya. If he would hold that it's enough mevatel le'echad, it shouldn't say l'shnayim. It seems to be a riot to Rabbah that yes, because you would have mevatel to both of them. The case of the ratio says le'echad she'er, because the guy's not there anymore. But if he would be, you would have mevatel to each and every one. Now the Gemara goes through and combs through the brisa. Why did we have to say all these cases of the brisa? So the Gemara begins its march through the brisa. So he said, echad shloi eruv, said one guy who did not join the eruv. He said, that was the first case that he could give his rights to one guy that joined the eruv. So the Gemara explains. Le'abai, according to Abai, did he say that the third guy is there? So then, the kamashmon, that's the chiddush of the brisa. The ein tzarich levatel reshus kol echad echad. You don't have to nullify to every single guy in the eruv. It's enough to le'echad she'er. That's why we have the case. Now, the Rabbah, we said, no, the third guy was there, but he missed, but he died. And that's why it makes sense, it's enough le'echad she'er, because if actually both guys would be allowed, you would have to mevatel to both of them. So what's the chiddush of the case if the guy's dead? Of course, there's only one guy here. No, the chiddush is v'lo gazrina. We're not geyser zimnin de isay. In other words, the question is, if the guy's dead, obviously you can mevatel to the one that's remaining, because that's what the case of the sefer was, that even two people mevatel to one person. The chiddush is that no, if we let you mevatel le'echad she'er, you might come to do it even when the other guy didn't die, and you can do it only to one of the two. That doesn't work, because Rabbi holds you have to mevatel kol echad le'echad. That's the chiddush of that first case. The second case said, b'shnayim she'irvu. If two people that joined in the eruv, we said that they could give their rights to one guy, the third guy, the member that didn't join the eruv. They can mevatel the rights to him. So Pshita, obviously, here, and as Rashi even points out, here you couldn't even say that there's a concern of a gezerah, that, oh, wait a second, if we let them be mevatel to him, as we said on the top of the summit from the previous Daf, then maybe we're going to be concerned that he's going to be mevatel to them. That's okay. If he's mevatel to them, they made an eruv. So that wouldn't be concerned, like, oh, maybe that's the chiddush of like, oh, maybe they should be mevatel to him because he might mevatel to them. And they're two. Okay, they're two, but they joined the eruv, he can mevatel to them. And since you already said by an individual they can mevatel, what's the difference if it's one person or two people? So how do we understand the necessity of this case? So do you want to know now that you say kim dolei eruv? Since this third guy, he didn't join the eruv. So say we should penalize him and not let them be mevatel to him. This guy's going to be carrying the chatzah on Shabbos? No, he's the guy that didn't join the eruv. We should not allow that. As Rashi says, from the ratio we don't learn this out because the ratio is talking about where the guy that didn't join the eruv, he's mevatel to them. That's why we needed the second case to say that we don't penalize the one who didn't make the eruv. That yes, that they can that they can mevatel to him. That's that case. Case number 3. We said Rabbi Shloimy, if two people did not join the eruv, said they could go ahead and give their rights to two of the members that did join the eruv. Like this case, the two people that didn't join the eruv, they can mevatel, and they're making it problematic because they didn't join the eruv. They can mevatel their rights to two people that make the eruv. So what's this case come to tell us? So this again depends on the machlekes of Abai and Rabbah. Le Rabbah tana sefer legluya reishon. This case is coming to reveal to us the understanding of the first case of the brisa. That the first case of the brisa is talking about that the echad she'irvu, the other one that made the eruv, used to be there, but he died, and that's the case of the echad she'irvu. Because if the other guy would have been around, you would have to be mevatel to him, because that's what this case is saying. Why lishnayim? Why not le'echad? Because to tell you that if both are around, you have to mevatel kol echad echad. So saying this case is revealing to us that the first case, to open the case, le'echad she'irvu, because that means to say the other guy wasn't around anymore because he died. Now, le'abaya, that he explains the case of the sefer, what does it mean lishnayim? It actually doesn't mean lishnayim because Rabbah holds you down to mevatel everyone. It means le'echad mishnayim. So that's difficult. So then why do you have to say le'echad lishnayim? That already was the case of the ratio that a yachal can mevatel to one of the two. What's the difference if one's being mevatel or two being mevatel? It doesn't make a difference. So according to Abaye, what's this case coming to tell us? It's coming to tell us it's necessary for the part of when you have two people that did not join the eruv that they could be mevatel their rights. So you would have thought to say ligzer that you should be concerned dilma asaliv tuleilahu. If we let these guys be mevatel to these guys who were mevatel, then we might come to do the reverse. The two that were part of the eruv might be mevatel to the two. It was our week and now it's your week. They mevatel to them. Oh, that's not going to work because these two did not join together. That's the chiddush according to Abaye that we don't make a gzeira that we're not going to let them mevatel less that they've been mevatel the other way. And we continue with case number 4. Oh, he always said that these two people could be mavatal that did not join the Erev, la'echad shalei Erev. So we have this case, no one was part of the Erev, and we're saying that the two that didn't join the Erev could be mavatal to the third member of the courtship that did not join in the Erev. Says Gemara Lamali, what do you need this case for? Obviously, there's only one guy here that he has all the rights, everyone's mavatal to him. So of course he could carry that there could be bittul. What's the chiddush of this case? Said you say Hanamili, when did we say all the case up until now that we're going to allow bittul? Is Heichad the Miktsas and Erev? Some of the members of the court joined the Erev. Miktsas and Erev, some of the members did not join in the Erev. That's where we're going to say, okay, some people forgot, what are we going to do? We're stuck, okay, we'll do bittul. But this case that we're describing, no one joined in the Erev. The two who did not join the Erev, we're saying Kamabatal to the third member who didn't join the Erev. So then when we say Liknesin, we should penalize them, that no one can carry in the Shabbos. You can't do bittul. Why? That we should not forget the laws of Erev from the little children are going to come. They're never going to see. No one joined in the Erev, so they don't know what's this matzah box. That no one's going to know anything. Kamash Malan, as we come to tell you that even in that case, that we don't penalize them for not making Erev. That even when no one joined, they can still do bittul to one person. Case number 5 was aval ein echad she'erev. But here's where we start saying what's not going to work. Here, bittul is not going to work. That's what we call the sefer. But you can't have one person who did not join in the Erev. He cannot give his rights to one person. You can't have this person. You can't have one person that was part of the Erev. He cannot give his rights to the one guy who did not join in the Erev. So what's this case come to tell us? Says Gemara. Le'abaya, according to Abaya, Tana Seifa, this case, that's not necessary, because obviously, there's still one person who did not nullify his rights to the guy Le'echad Shalei Erev. Of course, it's not going to work. The reason why we said is coming to tell you Ligluye Reisha. It's coming to reveal the understanding of the Reisha, meaning the whole Bryce is talking about when the two Ma'arvin are around. Obviously, right? Why isn't this working? Why isn't it working when this Echad She'ir is being Mevatel Le'echad Shalei Erev? Why isn't it working? Because the other guy is still here, who's not Mevatel his rights. Now, so the case is an obvious case, but the case is inherently telling us that the other guy of the Echad She'ir is around. Oh, and still you're telling me in the Reisha, that when you have one guy that did not join in the Erev, he could give his rights Le'echad She'erev, and you don't have Mevatel your rights to every single person, which means to say that he's not going to make it problematic, which is Abaya's halacha, that there's enough to do Le'echad She'erev. And you know the other guys did not like Rabba that the Habu missed, because then we wouldn't understand this case. If this guy's dead, then why wouldn't this guy be able to, the guy Le'echad She'ir, be Mevatel his rights Le'echad She'ir? Obviously this guy's still around. Oh, he's still around. So that's Megal on the Reisha, that you see Abaya's halacha. But the Rabba, according to Rabba, no, I did the Tana Reisha. It's only once we said in the Reisha. The flip side of this case, which is, if you have Echad Shaloi Erev, you have one guy who did not join the Erev, he can give his rights Le'echad She'ir to the guy that did join in the Erev. So Tana Nama Sefer, so therefore we say the flip side of that case, that the opposite is not going to work. You can't have the Echad She'ir be Mevatel's rights Le'echad Shaloi Erev, but it's obviously the way Rabbi explained, that because the Reisha was talking about that the guy was there and then he died. That's why the Echad Shalei Erev came about the Echad She'ir. The Sefer, where this talking about, although it's the same case, it's not the same case. The words are the same, but the Sefer is talking about where the guy is around, where this guy is here, and therefore they cannot involve with this one guy.
Why wouldn't it work anyway?
Which case? This case?
Yeah.
This case is not going to work because this one guy, Echad She'ir, is being involved with Echad Shalei Erev. The reason why it's not working is there's another guy who's not being involved with his rights. There's still these guys didn't join in the Erev. So him being Mevatel is not enough. So that's an obvious case.
Yeah, but the person that was Mevatel's rights, the middle guy.
Yeah.
He's together with the other guy that he made either.
No, he has no rights at all. He gave up all his rights, like he's not here. So this guy's getting all the rights. Problem is, he didn't give up his rights.
Yeah, but if you give it,
So that's the problem. It's such an obvious case. So Abai uses it to prove that why isn't it working? Because the Echad She'ir has his guy there. If he's there, then that proves the ratio, which said that proves that this case is that the guy is still around. And still you hold that he can vatal the Echad She'ir and not to this. According to Rabbah, it's not true. Rabbah has to say the guy is dead. If the guy is dead, then how do we understand this case if he's dead? No, Rabbah says, it's not true. The guy is alive in this case. So why are we saying it? You're right, there's nothing, no chiddush. It's because since we said the flip side, we're saying this way too. But you're right, there's no inherent chiddush according to Rabbah. Case number 6. The Ein Shnaim She'erv. You can't have two people that joined in the Eruv. Nisin Rishusin L'Shnaim She'erv to give their right to the two people that did not join in the Eruv. Says the Gemara Sulamali. Obviously, the two guys that you're giving to didn't join the Eruv. They're going to be Oyster and Zalzeh. So obviously you can't be involved with these two people. They didn't join the Eruv. You're not giving it to one person. This is still individual houses. Now they're sharing the courtyard together. So it's necessary. We're saying that subsequently, this guy, one of them, goes and mevatel his rights to the other guy. Now would you say now this relation should be permitted? Now there's only one guy standing. We already mentioned this before. Even the bottle, since at the time, as we said this at the end of the previous daf, since at the time they were mevatel to the two of them. The guy who's being mevatel didn't have any permissibility. He didn't really get their rights. So therefore, no, it's not going to work. I already explained this previously because he didn't get their bittel to really pass that on. Now, then there was like case number 7, which seems totally unnecessary. It said, but you can't have two people that did not join the Eruv. But to give their rights to two people that did not join the Eruv. So essentially, all 4 did not join the Eruv. We say that 2 of them cannot give it to 2 that didn't join the Eruv. Says the Gemara, what are you saying over here? There's no chiddush here at all in this case. Says the Gemara, no. It's necessary that even if the Amri kinei amanas lahaknois, as Rashi explains, it's an unnecessary case. So it's what's called Mishnah Yisera. That if not for this, you wouldn't have to save this case. Obviously, it's coming to tell us a bigger chiddush. That even if one recipient was told from the beginning, make the king in order to transfer the rights to the other person, it's still not going to work. He's not going to be considered as a shliach, and that's the chiddush of that 7th case of the Bryce. So again, we went through this whole Bryce, so we brought it originally because we were going to ask on it on Rabbah from the first case, but the Gemara did not refute him, and that's the most things of Abai and Rabbah, if regarding if you mevatel kol echad ve'echad, or it's enough to mevatel to one. Now, continuing on this theme regarding bittul, the Gemara has another question, the second theme on this daf. But even the Rav asked from Rav Nachman, Yoish, an inheritor, which as Rashi explains, the case when the father forgot to join the Eruv. Then the father died on Shabbos, and he was not mevatel his rishus. So ma'ashi mevatel rishus, could the Yoirish, could the inheritor, be mevatel his rights, and now everyone could carry in the development, because the one guy who didn't join the Eruv, his son who took over the rights of the house, is being mevatel on Shabbos. So he continued on base. So the Gemara explains. What's the question? If you were told about a guy who, if he wanted to, he could have joined in the Eruv from before Shabbos. So betuli nami let's mevatel. So that guy, meaning the father, who yesterday was able to join the Eruv, so although he didn't, but now today on Shabbos he can mevatel because bittul works when you could do Eruv, as we mentioned on previous daf. So the guy who could have done the Eruv, he could do bittul. But the Yairish kimedi by Eruvin Daf. Since if he would have wanted to join the Eruv, he could not have made the Eruv because he didn't have any rights in it on Erev Shabbos. So so now today on Shabbos he can't do bittul. Maybe no Yairish Kardavu. It's called the inheritor is the knee of his father. He's an extension of his father. So therefore he takes the place of his father. So since the father was able to be ma'ariv, the son is continuing that legacy, and he can now do the bittul. That's the Gemara's question. So the Gemara says, Amalei. So he answered him, he says, Amachlekes. Aniyam mevatel. So Rav Nachman says, I say that you could do bittul. But the Hani Dibei Shmuel, Tanu, but in the Shiva of Shmuel, they said, Ein mevatel, no, you cannot do bittul. So Amachlekes regarding if a Yerush could do bittul or not. So Esvei, the Gemara has 2 brayos that seem to contradict Rav Nachman. The brayso says like this, again, classic Talmudic style, we're going to explain the brayso, and then we'll see what's the difficulty on Rav Nachman. The brayso says like this, Zahakal, this is the rule, and the Gemara is going to explain each one of the cases. But first we're going to quote it in its entirety. Kol shemutar l'miktzas Shabbos. Whatever is permitted for part of Shabbos, hutar l'chol Shabbos, it's going to be permitted for the whole Shabbos. For kol shenesel l'miktzas Shabbos, whatever was forbidden for part of Shabbos, nesel l'chol Shabbos can be forbidden for the whole Shabbos. The one exception to this law is someone who is giving up his rights in the courtyard. So the Gemara explains the cases. When we say in the brayso kol shehutar l'miktzas Shabbos, whatever is permitted for part of Shabbos is mutar l'chol Shabbos going to be permitted for the whole Shabbos. Kugoin. That's for example, Eruv derech haPesach. For example, if you have 2 courtyards and you have an opening between the 2 courtyards, and you made an Eruv, meaning to say you joined the 2 courtyards through that opening, on Shabbos the building collapsed and the opening got closed up. The nistam haPesach. The opening now is closed. The only way you were able to make an Eruv together is because you guys had an opening. Now the opening is closed. Or let's say Eruv derech halayim. You joined together through a window. The nistam halayim, and then the Shabbos it collapsed over there, and now the window got closed. So that's what the brayso is saying. It's going to be permitted to carry from one area to the other through throwing, let's say, or through different crevices. So, because although you can only make an Erev between two courtyards with a Pesach, as the Mishnah teaches later on of Ein Vav Med Aleph, that you have to have a window between the two courtyards. Over here, what's called Shabbos Hoy B'Hutra Hutra. Since when Shabbos started, you guys were able to carry one between the other because it was opening. Although it closed, since it was Hutra L'Mitzvah Shabbos, it's going to be Hutra L'Chol Shabbos. Okay. Now, but when it says Zeh Klal, it's the Bryce opened up by saying this is the rule. Usually Zeh Klal is coming to include something like this is the rule. Just say the case. This rule is like a rule means to say that there's other cases that are going to have this similarity. That's Lasuya Mavish and Nitlik Kareis like the picture we have over here. Let's say you have a mavoi, an alleyway that the crossbeam or the side post was removed on Shabbos. So even though now it lost quote unquote its mechitzas because it's like the fourth wall, the lechi or the kairo, it's still going to be permitted since it was permitted by bein hashmashas. As Rashi points out, in the case of the Reisha, you would not have known this case of the lechi or the kairo because there, although let's say the Pesach is closed, but the walls are still there. Here, when you lose the lechi or the kairo, you don't have the walls. That's how the Gemara explains it on Daf Yomi and Medal. So that's what we learn out from the Zakal. Now, then the Brisa says, Kol shenes l'miktzas Shabbos. Whatever is forbidden for part of Shabbos is nes l'chol Shabbos. Kol is forbidden for the whole Shabbos. What's that case? That's like, for example, you have two houses on two sides of Rishus Rabim. They keep them not for mechitza v'Shabbos, and then on Shabbos, non-Jews come along and enclose you with walls. Which what we're saying is it's going to be forbidden for each party, each house, to be mevatel his rights in this quote unquote new courtyard to the other person, so that one of them could use it on Shabbos. Why? Because since had they wanted to make an Erev together from before Shabbos, they could not have made an Erev, as we mentioned previously in Salon Zayin Med Aleph. There was no Chutz over here. It's only made on Shabbos. So therefore, they cannot go ahead and do Bittul on Shabbos. But if, let's say, there would have only been one, Rashi explains, let's say there was only one house, and the non-Jews surrounded him on Shabbos, he actually would be able to carry that because the Mechitza that's made on Shabbos is considered Mechitza, and he didn't do anything wrong. So that's the case where we're saying that since it was Usr for part of Shabbos, before Shabbos you could not have made an Erev, so it's going to be Usr l'chal Shabbos Kuli, you can't do Bittul now. Now when it says Zeh Klal, because as Rashi explains, the opening words of Zeh Klal is going not just on the first case, but also on the second case of what's Usr l'miktzas Shabbos, Usr l'chal Shabbos Kula. Lasui, what's that coming to include? That's like the picture we have over here, is Lasui coming to include even if Neis Nachri b'Shabbos. If the non-Jew member of the development, if he dies on Shabbos, even so, since if they had wanted to make an Erev from before Shabbos, they could not have made an Erev from before Shabbos because there was the Nachri that they didn't rent from. So here also now they cannot be Mavatal on Shabbos. As Rashi points out, from the Reisha of the Sefer, you would not have known this had you not learned it out from the Zaklal, because in the first case of which we said, what's the case of Asl Miktzah Shabbos, was talking about where there was no walls. So yeah, there you could not have made an Erev at all. There was no mechitzas at all. The case of when you had the two Jews across the street from each other and the non-Jews circling them made mechitzas on Shabbos, there was no way to make an Erev at all. There was no mechitzas. Here, technically, they could have, so to speak, been able to make an Erev by renting the rights from the non-Jew. So it's a little bit better. So you would have thought maybe that they could go ahead now that the Nachri died, being involved one to the other. They were saying no, that's still included in the category of Kol Shenes L'Miktzas Shabbos is Neser L'Chol Shabbos Kul. Now, this is the main point what we want from this Brisa. Brisa concludes, the Ketani we said, Chutz Mimevatel Rishos. Except, what's an exception to these rules that we said in the Brisa of the Zaklal, is someone who's giving up his rights. Where if he forgot and not joined the Erev, so though it was Neser L'Miktzas Shabbos because he didn't join the Erev, there's a rectification on Shabbos, which is he can mevatel his rights. That's something that was usher until he did bittul. But once he does bittul, then it's going to be permitted. Now, it doesn't say chutz mi bittul rishus and yerish. So obviously, ihu in, yeah, only the mevatel, but yerish loy, not the inheritor, because then it should have said chutz mi mevatel rishus v'yerish. Says no, it's not difficult. It must say chutz mi toyras bittul rishus. Doesn't mean just the guy himself, from the halachic category of being mevatel rishus. And the Yerush is included because the Yerush is Kar Davua, and the halaws of Bittul apply to him, and therefore it's not a difficulty under Nachman. The Gemara quotes another Brisa that seems to be a difficulty under Nachman. Brisa says, if one of the members of the courtyard died, now who's in the will? Who's one of the guys that lives somewhere else, someone in the marketplace, he's inheriting this guy from the neighbor. Someone, his cousin that lives in the neighboring town. So now it depends when this guy died. If he dies, if this member from the development died when it was still daytime, so that means to say his Eruv, that he was part of the Eruv, is not going to acquire because he's dead by the time Shabbos starts. So obviously not part of the Eruv. So that comes out that the one from the Shuk is going to be Iser, is going to make it forbidden on everyone in the development. Because as Rashi points out, although he doesn't even live over here, and that's what someone had asked previously, a Bryce will teach on later on the parak, if someone has a Beis HaTevin or a Beis HaBakar in his friend's courtyard, he's going to make it forbidden, even though he doesn't live over there. So this guy who's the Yerush from the Shuk, he's going to make it, he's not part of the Eruv. And the guy who's part of the Eruv died from before Shabbos, so does he make it us? But let's say Mishchashecha, let's say the guy died when it was already Shabbos, then Ein Oiser. Then the guy who inherits is not going to make it forbidden because it was already, quote, Hutru Lemiktzas HaShabbos. It was already permitted for part of Shabbos. That's one case. Now let's say it's the opposite case. That's the case that we're going to ask from. The Echad Min HaShuk. Let's say you have someone from the marketplace who had a house in this courtyard. He didn't live over here, but he had a house in this property. Shemes, he died. Now he left over the rights. Someone in the living development says, you live there, when I die, you'll be able to get that house. Now, so it depends. Here also, if this guy from the Shuk, if he died from before Shabbos, he's not going to make it forbidden because the guy that he left it for was part of the Eruv with the neighbors. So since he yarshened it from before Shabbos, great, now this house is part of the Eruv. So therefore he's not going to make it forbidden. But if let's say, and this is the case we're going to ask from, let's say the guy who is not part of the Eruv, who lived in the Shuk, died when it was already Shabbos, then Oyser, that guy's going to make it forbidden. So on that says the Gemara, if you tell me that a Yerush could be Mavatal, the Rishos, Samai Oyser, why are you telling me that if the guy dies from the one who doesn't live in the development, dies after Shabbos starts, that now he can't make the Eruv anymore, that now it's going to be Usr? Who cares that the guy can't be part of the Eruv? But Levatal, he could nullify his rights. Could you tell me Yerush could be Mavatal? Who cares that he could not have been Ma'arib? You told me the Yerush takes over the rights and he could be Mavatal. Says the Gemara, you're right, it's not difficult on Rav Nachman. My Oyser Namidigtani, what does the Brisa mean? When it says Oyser, it means Sheyavata. It means he's going to make it Usr because he's not part of the Eruv. But it's up until he does Bittul. When he does Bittul, you're right, Bittul would work, and that would be a way out of it. But it's still going to be Oyser because in this context it means only until the Yerush is Mavatal Rishos. It's going to, meaning the previous case not going to be Oyser because he died from before Shabbos. If he died before Shabbos, it's totally mutter because he left it for someone who lives in development who is part of the Eruv. That's mutter. This case that we're saying is Usr because the guy died once already Shabbos. And the guy who inherits it, he couldn't get it onto the Eruv because it was in that guy's domain from before Shabbos. But he could do Bittul. Yeah, when he does Bittul, that will undo the Isser, but it's still going to be Usr. And therefore, it's not difficult on Rav Nachman. Something to discuss in today's Daf, in Eruvin Daf Ayin, was to explain the halacha of the Mishnah, the last of explaining the case of the Mishnah, we said that two people cannot take rights. So what's the chiddush in that case? That even though they told him, Kiniyam and Aslahaknis, acquire with the intention of giving over to that remaining one guy, it's still not going to work as a shliach. Then we had a machlekes, which really were the two themes in today's daf. The one regarding if you have mevatel kol echad ve'echad, and regarding Yerush, that if you can mevatel. So regarding that discussion, we had a machlekes if you have mevatel to every single person in the courtyard, as Rabbah said, or like Abai says, no, it's enough mevatel to one of them. Now, it was mashma from the Brisa, the first case that said that one person who did not join the Eruv could give his rights le'echad she'eruv to one of the guys who joined the Eruv. That sounds like Abai, that you don't have to do it to each one. Because le'echad she'eruv means there's obviously another guy that was in the Eruv and you're not mevatel to him. And he's saying it's going to work. So Rabbah would tell you, no, he was there, the other guy, but he died. So and what we ended up saying, what's the chiddush of that case according to Rabbah? That we're not geyser. That sometimes he's going to still be there and you're going to only mevatel to one of the two. That was the chiddush according to Rabbah. According to Abai, the first case obviously was a chiddush that it's enough to do it to one guy and not to every single one. Now, according to Rabbah, the thing is you have to explain that the seifa, which was the case, aval ein echad she'ir, but it's not going to work when one of the two people made the eruv. That it's not going to work for him to give his rights to the one guy who did not join the eruv. It must be talking about that then the guy is around and he's not dead. Because if it was the same as the case of the ratio that the guy died, then it's only two people left. The echad she'ir and the echad she'ir, and then of course you move out to the echad she'ir. Obviously, that Rabbah has to say, yeah, that's talking about when the guy is still around. And we went through all the 7 cases explaining regarding what the cases are talking about, it's a necessity. Then we had the second half of the Brisa of the Daf, which was a machlekes of a Yerush k'mevat or not. Now, we had 2 questions on Rav Nachman, and that's why we said they're not difficult. One Brisa said that this is the rule. Whatever is mutter l'miktzas Shabbos is mutter l'chol Shabbos kula. We said whatever is asr l'miktzas Shabbos is asr l'chol kula. And then we said except for the mevat rishos. So regarding the case of mutter, we said that's, for example, where people made an Erev through an opening, then they got closed. And we're saying it's still going to work because it's hukim and shuhutra once it's permitted for Shabbos and permitted. And the Zak clause can include even if the side posts were taken away where you lose the mechitz. Okay, that's good. We said the case when it's usher, it's going to remain usher. It's, for example, you have two houses on two sides of the street, and the nachrim went and enclosed it, a mechitzas on Shabbos. Say it's still going to remain usher. You cannot do bittul because you cannot have done the Erev before Shabbos. And Zak clause coming to believe when the nachri dies on Shabbos, which that's a little bit bigger chiddush because then you were able to do the Erev before Shabbos. The renting, no, since usher limits Shabbos, it's going to usher chal to kol. Now, the question of Nachum was, we said except from Mavat Rishus. Except from Mavat Rishus. What is that? What are you telling me? Why are you saying Mavat Rishus? Why don't you say Yairish? Obviously, not like of Nachum, the Yairish cannot Mavat Rishus. No, when it says Yairish, because it could be Toiris Bitul Rishus, which includes the Yairish, and therefore it's not difficult of Nachum. And we had a second question from a Bryce. We had one person from the Shuk that dies, and he leaked that, which was the Seifa of that Bryce. So we said the ratio too. We said the Seifa. If someone from the market dies and leaves over his rights to someone of the courtyard, we said if it happens after dark, it's going to be usher. Wait a second, why is it usher? The Yairish you telling me Mavat was right. You're right. It's usher because it wasn't included in the Erev, which would have been like the case when he dies from before Shabbos. Then the guy who Yarishins gets it from before Shabbos and he's part of the Erev. Then it's mutter. Here it's usher ad sheyavatl until he's mavatl. But you're right. Once he's mavatl, then it's like Rav Nachman that a Yairish can mavatl, and then it's not doing Rav Nachman. Thank you to any time for hosting this.